right, so it is 4:10. I am so excited to introduce someone who really doesn't need any introduction, but this is my very good friend Denisse, and she's going to tell you all about her very cool jobs that she's had over the years. I met Denisse at the camp that I told you guys I work at in Hawaii. I'm actually wearing my camp shirt today to show that that's where Denisse and I met, and we worked together for a couple summers. And before we start, is everyone, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me and see me and everything's good. No technical problems? And Andrea, are you good? All right, excellent. And I will pass this over to Denisse.
All right, hi guys. So I am super excited. As I mentioned to some of you guys that were here on earlier, I do have a presentation to show you because I have some really cool images of some of the projects that I worked on both at NASA and now at Blue Origin with the commercial space exploration that I think will really drive home. And then I really want to just open up the floor and talk to you guys afterwards. So Ms. Downey, if you don't mind showing up the presentation and making sure that everybody can see it, we'll go ahead and get started.
Absolutely. All right, so I'm going to share the screen. You guys all have my number, by the way, right? So if there's any problem, you can text me. I have my phone right here, okay? All right. Okay. Screen share.
Okay. Yeah. All right, can everybody see that and my face? Are we all good before we get started? Can I see a thumbs up from a couple of people there? All right, sweet. So as she mentioned, my name is Denisse Aranda. I am a contamination control engineer, which I will explain what that means later. But of interest is I build rocket ships, and I did that at NASA, Langley in Virginia, and now I work at Blue Origin doing the same thing. So the first thing I want to do is back up a little bit, right? Because the world is big and space is even bigger. So here's what I want to do. If you can go to the next slide.
Absolutely.
So that's where you guys are. That is your school up there. If you follow that all the way down to that blue dot, that's where I currently am. I am in South Florida, riding out the COVID storm. And then you can see, if you keep going down, you see Venezuela. That's where I was born. And then you see Canada up north. And if you keep zooming out further, you're going to see on the next slide a beautiful image of the Earth. And I'm sure you guys have seen images similar to this, but what's cool about this image is that it was taken from space. And all the work that I've done in my life takes place right here in this area. So just on the edge of space, we're talking just north of our entire planet, not quite outside the solar system, just in these edge of space. You can see all the stars that are there. But a lot of the people that I worked on with at NASA went even further than that. And here's where things start to get a little crazy, right? You've heard about Hubble, you've heard about telescopes. If you zoom out even further from our planet, you have all the other planets that make up our solar system. If you zoom out even further than that, and you can see in the next slide, we are part of a bigger galaxy, and it's called the Milky Way galaxy. In the center is a massive black hole. And we are that little speck right there. That's where we are. So to give you that sense of scale, every image that we've ever seen about the planets, everything we know about the solar system, all the phones that you use, all your data, all that comes from satellites. And all of that was launched on a rocket. So everything that I'm talking about is ways to make our life better through science. So now that we have a sense of scale, we're going to zoom back in and go to the next slide. And I kind of want to take you to the beginning. So that adorable little girl, that's me. I was 6. Yo nací en Caracas, Venezuela, en el año 1985. Mis padres y yo emigramos a los Estados Unidos. Llegamos a Miami, Florida, y ahí es donde tuve toda mi educación. For those of you that don't speak Spanish, I was born in Caracas, Venezuela. That is one of the last photos of me that was taken on a beach. If you haven't been there, which I don't recommend, it's a beautiful, beautiful country, and we left for a whole lot of political reasons. But when we left, we came to Miami, Florida. And if you've ever been here or have heard of it, it's a very unique place to grow up. It's not only really densely populated, but it's also really heavily Latino. So if you go to the next slide, I kind of want to give you a breath of where I came from. So I come from Venezuela, came to Miami-Dade County specifically. And while we're not as densely populated as you guys in New York, we're still the 7th largest city in the US. We've got 5.5 million people. Just to give you a frame of reference for like how large the schools were, my high school currently this year had 5,380 students, and that's just grade 9 through 12. I mean, that is just massive. My undergraduate at FIU, we've got 40,000 students, and the breakdown is we're about 70% Latino and Hispanic, usually from Central and South, and about 67% of us list Spanish as their first language, which is my first language and most of the friends that I grew up with. And I added those 2 extra pictures on the bottom because there are people in the world that when they're in high school, when they're very young, from a very young age, they know exactly what they want to do in their life. I was not one of those lucky ones. I liked a lot of things and I didn't know what I wanted to do. You can see I was in the marching band, I was in the color guard, I was in the dance team, and it really wasn't until I went to university at FIU where I really fell in love with space. I always thought it was cool, but I fell in love with space. That's why I think it's so important to go to college, by the way, because when you guys go to college, they're going to give you all these classes that are in a range of things that you get to choose, and then you get to find out what you love and what you want to study. And for me, that was mechanical engineering. So if you go to the next slide, Ms. Downey.
Denisse, actually, can I ask you one question?
Please. Yeah.
How old, because Spanish is your first language, so you didn't know English when you came to America. How old were you when you learned English? Because I know some of our students, Spanish is their first language.
That was, so when I came to this country, I did not know English at all. So I was part of the ESOL program, the English as a Second Language. So I did that for.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So my classes were in ESOL for the first couple of years. So they would take you out, teach me English, come back. I also watched TV with captions, and that helped me read too. I still watch it like that. It was definitely a little bit of a struggle in the beginning, but yeah. Sometimes you can hear my accent come out. Sometimes people will be like, "Wait, what? You speak Spanish?" Yeah. So for this slide, here's what I want you to do. You can just ignore all the words, okay? What I want you to look at is these pictures. So mechanical engineering, they build everything that has an on-off switch. So the first project, the first things that I built are those 2 pictures that you see. That is a solar house. I was part of the solar decathlon team, so that's really cool. Those are houses that are completely off the grid. They're powered by solar panel. I got to go to the Beijing Olympics in 2008, so I got to spend the whole summer there working on the solar decathlon. And then the bottom 2 photos are the first time I worked at NASA. So when you go to college, you can actually get a job working and interning at a company, and I got to work at NASA, and that was my first time looking at a rocket ship. And that was so amazing to see it go up in the air. I have a video that I'll show you guys later, but that was a really cool experience. And then the last part about the education that I want to point out is, if you go to the next slide, Ms. Downey, is for graduate school, I went to Virginia Tech in Virginia. And that was a really interesting experience on an emotional, personal level, because the culture at Virginia is very different than South Florida and big cities in general. So that was a little bit of a culture shift for me. But that image that you're looking at right there is the first thing I built that got to go into space, which is super cool. So what you're looking at, this mushroom looking thing, is an inflatable heat shield. So when you are landing on a planet like Mars, it's really, really hot when you go into the atmosphere. And so you have to have these big, big heat shields that are made out of metal, and they heat up, and it's really heavy and it's problematic. So what we did is we made it inflatable. Think of like an inflatable air mattress that you are just jettisoning through the atmosphere, like in that top left corner. And then my job was to build that metal piece that you see right there on the right. And my master's is in material science.
Actually, Denisse, so my students, guys, remember when we watched Hidden Figures? Remember we watched Hidden Figures? Those of you who watched it all the way to the end, what was the big, remember the big problem was that they needed to get the astronaut back into space, but the heat shield was broken, right?
Say that one more time, sorry, your sound.
Oh yeah, so we watched Hidden Figures earlier this year, and at the very end, they had to, you know, the heat shield was broken, and they were afraid the astronaut, was it John Glenn, they were trying to get back, and he was gonna die in space essentially because of the heat shield was broken. So Denisse actually built this heat shield.
Yep, and actually, if you guys ever get a chance to study some of the space shuttle accidents that we have, so it was with Columbia and a couple of others, there was one where the heat tile was damaged, and that's what caused the shuttle to blow up and all the astronauts died. And so the heat shield is very important. It's certainly a matter of life and death. And so, but if you can build it to be collapsible, it changes everything. So that was a really formative and really cool project. And then the last bit, I'm super excited. If you can go to the next one. Okay, so hidden in this slide is a picture of Miss Downey. Can you guys find it?
You see me at all?
Yeah.
I see her.
Yeah. And right there. So this is just kind of like a mosh podge of just like miscellaneous things about me. So, you know, in the top one, that is a 3D printed computer. My husband and I like to 3D print stuff. I can talk about that later if you like. That top center photo, I got to spend a summer in Sri Lanka. It's a little island off the coast of India, and I got to teach English to Buddhist monks. That was a whole really great experience. And then here's me and Miss Downey. What you see behind us is an active lava flow. So we are on a metal boat next to an active volcano. And that's why we're friends. As she mentioned in my description, my husband is in the military. We are a military family. He's on submarines. So this is our wedding photo underwater. We're scuba divers. And then I've got a cute little baby girl who, if time allows, I can show you later. She's 9 months. Her name is Serena Mahina Ku'ule Momi. Okay, so back to space. Here we go. Next slide. Remember that first image that I showed you, and it was of the Earth, and I said all the work I did was right there on the edge of space. Here's what I'm talking about. So this is the International Space Station. What's so cool about this is that it's a floating science laboratory, and I got to build something that's orbiting it right now. And sometimes when you look up in the night sky and you see what you think is a shooting star, it could actually be the ISS. And mounted on that ISS is something that I built. If you go to the next slide, it's called SAGE. And I don't want to spend too much time on it because I could spend an hour, but basically here's what it does. It's looking at the sun as it hits our atmosphere, and it collects data. And the thickness of the atmosphere will change how intense that light is shown. And that gives us information as to whether the atmosphere is dense or it's thin, and then that gives us a lot of knowledge on how our Earth is doing with respect to climate change and aerosols and water vapors. And then if you go to the next one, what's really cool, I know as part of your homework, Ms. Downey had you look at the competitor for Blue Origin, which is the one I currently work for. But Stage 3, the one I launched was actually launched using SpaceX, which is shown right here in the bottom. So we launched on the Falcon 9 on February 17th. That center photo is a picture of the Stage 3 mounted on the outside. So that curvature of the Earth is real. And what's even cooler about this is that it can use any light source. So remember that image of the sun going through the atmosphere as a light source? You can use the moon. The moon does not emit light, but it reflects light. And so if you were on the ISS right now and you looked out the window, you could see this right here. And this is moonrise and moonset. Go to the next slide, Miss Downey, and then go to the next one. I'm just going to speed up a little bit so we can have time for their questions.
Sure.
This is one of my favorite pictures ever. I love this picture because it's a selfie. We made this science instrument. We flew it to the edge of space. So it's not quite space because it was just outside of our atmosphere. It's about 11 miles. But we flew a GoPro and we took a selfie in space, and you could see all those signatures. And then Miss Downey, did you just show the one that I have up there? Yeah. It's like, those are all the people who worked on it. By the way, this was built by 12 engineers, and all of us were in our mid-20s. It was a very, very cool project. And the data that we collected, by the way, underneath all that foam, I know you can't see it, we were collecting radiation data. So every time that you fly on an airplane, or any time that you're really high up where the clouds can't protect you anymore, you're exposed to galactic radiation. And we wanted to know exactly how much. So that's what this was doing. And those are the two projects I want to highlight with NASA. And now we come to this next phase of not only my life, but of space exploration, which is Blue Origin. I know Ms. Downey had you guys read an article about it. I'm gonna play a video. It's really short, it's like 90 seconds, but it's from Blue Origin and it gives you a little bit of an idea of what it is that we're currently working on. So Ms. Downey, take it away.
All right, let me make sure. Okay, and this one, correct, Denise? Oh.
A Millions Working in Space?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, 8th graders, thumbs up if you can see this. Thumbs up if you can see the screen. Good, I got Crowley, I got Ms. Vargas, I got Charlene, I got Brian, can you see it?
We can't see your YouTube, we're still on the PowerPoint, by the way.
Oh, okay. You're still in the PowerPoint, that's the problem. Okay, I'm going to do this. And Denise, how's this? Yay. Okay, we can see this? All right, here we go.
The human need to explore is deep within all of us. Our ancestors crossed mountain ranges, sailed open oceans to map new lands, and sought out the unknown while always looking to the stars. We're curious, and now we're in a place where we can pioneer new horizons. Because Earth, this blue planet and all its beauty, is just our starting place. It's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, mandate start, 2, 1. And lift off. 5,000 feet. I'm climbing.
That was a beautiful launch. There it is, separation.
Now is the time to open the promise of space to all and lay the way for generations to come. When our descendants look to the stars, perhaps from a rocky moon or colonies floating in open space, they'll remember this time. When they reflect on where it started, they'll remember this place.
Touchdown.
And when they honor those first explorers who said, "Let's go," they'll remember these bold steps. We are a Blue Origin. And this is just the beginning.
All right, thank you. If we can go back to the PowerPoint whenever we get a chance. So I love that because I kind of showed you little segments of what Blue Origin is doing. And now I'm going to tell you guys 3 different things about Blue Origin, right? I'm going to tell you about New Shepard, which is their little rocket. I'm going to tell you about New Glenn, which is their big rocket that I'm working on. And then what I'm so excited about is the long-term goals of Blue Origin, like where we see ourselves going in the future. And I'm excited for that because you guys are going to be the ones working on it. And so here we go. So this guy right here is New Shepard. He is basically a mini vacation. This is where, if you go to the next slide, this top part of the rocket, this is what's inside. You and 3 of your friends can go up in space and see that curvature of the Earth. You can free float, just like floating in air for, well, and you guys have a worksheet that tells you exactly how long you'll be doing that for, but I love it because it's the first time that you can pay to go in space with your friends and look at all those windows. It's really cool. After the Zoom meeting, I will send you guys a link to a YouTube video because one of the first tests that we did in Blue Origin to make sure that it was safe for human, we put a mannequin and we called him Mannequin Skywalker. And we launched them up all the way up, and we have a camera, and you can see how it would look to sit inside. Super cool. Again, just commercial, just for fun. If you go to the next one, next slide, Ms. Anna. Yeah, so this is New Glenn. This is a rocket that I personally work on. I don't have an actual picture because we haven't built it yet. That's what we're doing right now. What's neat about this rocket is that this is how we're going to go to low Earth orbit. There's actually 7 ways to orbit the Earth. Sometimes, like a geo orbit, we do it for communication satellites. So all your cell phones, for example, they use a certain type of satellite to communicate to other locations. If we want to take pictures of the Earth, like that first picture I showed in the beginning, that's a different altitude, different trajectory, and we can do about 7 different ones. What's even cooler is that we can go to the moon with it. In fact, we just got a really cool contract to land a lunar rover. But as far as rockets are concerned, maybe another day I can walk you through the anatomy of a rocket, what all the pieces do, and why they're important. But for right now, I want to point out the coolest thing that Blue Origin is doing. If you go to the next slide, as far as engineering, this is just brilliant. I'm about to blow your mind. Okay, so in the Apollo, we used to go to the moon and back, and we used to crash land in the ocean. Like we would just jettison all the stuff in the ocean. Well, now we're not doing that anymore because that was messy, that was sloppy, it's dangerous. What if there's high seas? We almost drowned an astronaut once. So now what we do at Blue Origin is we can safely reuse the rocket. It's got these retrograde rockets so that you can softly land on top of a boat. And what's even crazier is that the boat is moving. So not only are you getting a rocket that's coming back into Earth, but you're landing it on a surface that's moving. And by the way, we can also worry about the fees. And we've done it so many times. It allows us to do it safely. Oh, and okay, so here's where you guys come in. Because we and all the people before me have done so much great work in making space accessible, affordable, cheap. Like we can send stuff there all the time. But this is the future. This is called O'Neill Colonies. So you remember how I told you about the ISS and how I have a little instrument there that can look at the atmosphere and we collect data and astronauts live there? This is a version of that that's going to be orbiting the Earth, except it's going to be rotating, so it has artificial gravity. Not only does it have artificial gravity, but if you look inside, you can have whole cities. You can have communities, you can have gardens, you can have schools, you can have everything. And that's the vision that Blue Origin is pushing, is the colonization of space where we can have a society that lives and breathes. And I know it sounds like sci-fi, but it's not. It's real. We're working on it. It's happening. It's happening. And it's going to happen in your lifetime, not mine. So please join us. Make it possible. And then, yeah, okay, so I'm going to sum it up. One, NASA has done phenomenal things for exploring the cosmos and will continue to explore the cosmos. Now we've made space so accessible that private companies, for the first time in history, have access to space. And that means that your generation is the first generation ever where you can launch into space so easily and so quickly. And if you're even this curious about what's out there, I hope that you'll inquire more and study science. And even if you're just a supporter, I appreciate you. And with that, I'll close and I'll open up the floor for questions. We've got about 25 more minutes, so thank you.
So thank you so much, Denisse. I'm gonna, let's see, stop sharing and go on to here. If you're hiding your screen because of the screen sharing, that's fine, but please turn your camera back on. Thank you, Frank Carlos. And thank you, Israel. All right, so questions for Denisse. I know a bunch of you sent them in to me and they were all amazing, and I'm really excited that you guys get to talk to her. So any volunteers to go first? How about a leader, an 8th grade leader? Why don't you volunteer? Sarah E., thank you.
Mentioned you had a lot of accomplishments, so which one are
Sarah E., I'm sorry, can you start over? Sarah E.
You mentioned that you've done a lot of things, but what's like the one thing that you're most proud of?
Yeah, so you know what I'm most proud of is getting my first undergraduate degree, more than anything, because for me personally, it was hard to make that transition for education wise. Like it was hard for me to finish and start college, and I'm very proud of that because once you have a college degree, then everything's a lot easier to come by, right? And so then you have a team and you have people that love you and encourage you. But I would say that what I'm most proud of is taking that first step and going to college and maybe not being scared to fail sometimes. You know, there was certainly, I can tell you right now that when I first took physics with calculus, I took it almost 3 times because I failed the first time. It was so hard. It was so hard. And the math was really confusing and I just didn't understand it. And I could have given up. I thought about giving up, but luckily I had a friend and they tutored me. And then it turns out I'm actually really good at math. I just don't know algebra apparently. So that's what I'm most proud of, is not giving up.
Jaylene, you were next.
So right now, a lot of people are focusing on what's out in space, which is good. But most people also want to know what's out there in the sea or in the ocean because only 3% have been discovered. So do you think that it is more important to focus on what's out there in space or what's out there in the ocean?
I love that question. Thank you. And the reason why that's such an interesting point is because you're absolutely right. The percentage that we've explored in space is almost the same as in the bottom. There's so many things in the bottom of the ocean that we don't know. And interestingly enough, I mentioned very briefly that Kevin, who's my husband, he's a submariner. So he's in the US Navy and he's on submarines at a classified depth. And he'll be the first to tell you of how little we understand about what's in the bottom of the ocean. I am an opponent of science for all. I don't think it has to be a choice. We have NOAA and we have NASA and we work together. And the beauty about engineering is that the technology that we use to go to space is similar to the technology that we use to go to submarines. Did you know that some of our astronauts are submariners? Life in a submarine and in a capsule are almost identical. The science, by the way, that you need to capture underneath the ocean, those type of sensors are same sensors that we use in space. And so you'll find a lot of the people working on both. And they're complementary. They're definitely complementary. Thank you for your question.
So you guys can raise your hand just by doing it right on camera like this so I can see it. Charlene, go ahead. Thank you.
So out of all the machines or mechanics that you've designed or built, which one has been one that you've enjoyed the most?
Okay, that one I didn't actually get a chance to talk about, but I have it in the backup. And we may be able to project it, and if it's too complicated, don't worry about it, but on slide 25. So there was, about 10 years ago, I got to build another rocket called Aries 1X. And that was really exciting because at the time there wasn't a whole lot of new rockets being built. And this is the coolest thing. What you don't see is that there's hundreds of people working on it, right? So what I worked on was like this little itty bitty part of this massive rocket. But that was the first time in my life when we were at the Cape. And have you seen those images of like Cape Canaveral, Kennedy Space Center, where they have the it's on the launch pad and they're going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it starts. I cried. I cried. It was like almost 4 years of my life that I worked on this project, and it's like finally going up, and it's just like this overwhelming emotion. And while I've built things that have made a bigger scientific contribution, for me personally, that's a feeling that I've never felt since in 10 years. And one of the reasons why I'm excited to work for Blue Origin, because I'm hoping I'll feel that same way when we launch New Glenn. I don't know. Ask me again in 2021. We'll see. Thank you for your question. I appreciate it.
Hands up. Jaylene, go ahead.
Okay, I have another question. So you mentioned how SpaceX and Blue Origin are competing right now. So do you think that that competition could benefit both companies, or could it be a distraction as well?
Yeah, um, that's well, personally, okay, let me back up. When I was working at NASA when both of these companies started, and I loved it. I loved it, and here's why I love it. It is so expensive to go to space, right? And remember that the pictures that I showed in the beginning, where it's like here's Earth, and then like here's the solar system, and then here's the Milky Way. So going to low Earth orbit and back, which is what we're doing at Blue Origin, what SpaceX is doing, that's really well understood. I mean, it's still dangerous and it's still hard, but it's not new. Like we know how to do that. So if private companies start going to low Earth orbit, that means NASA now can go all the way out. So we can build the telescopes like the James Webb telescopes. We can go to the probes all the way out to the solar system. Do you know we have a probe that's even further away than the solar system? Like think of all the inner planets, the Kepler belts, the outer planets, and then even further than that. We launched that in 1976, I want to say. And it just arrived. That's 3 generations. That's how big space is. So the fact that there's private companies means NASA can do that type of work. And then we collectively as the private space companies can then go to low Earth and back. With respect to Blue Origin versus SpaceX, and there's a couple of more, it's not just us two, but those are the biggest ones. I think it's healthy. I think the more people in space, the better. Yeah, it makes it cheaper for everyone.
Denisse, I didn't know that. We spent some time in, oh. Is this better? Okay. I didn't know that. We spent some time in science class talking about New Horizons. 8th graders, what planet did New Horizons get recent pictures of? Michael?
Pluto?
Yes. So we talked about how New Horizons took, does anyone remember how many years from launch to getting to Pluto? How many years that took? Michael, you remember?
Was it 11 or like 7?
Close. It was 9. It was not 9 years, right, Denisse? I'm pretty sure it was 9 years to get to from Earth to Pluto to get those pictures. And it took even longer for this other probe to go all the way out past the Kuiper Belt. All right, you guys remember the Kuiper Belt, right? Where Pluto is on the edge of our solar system?
Yes.
Right? Awesome. All right. Another question for our fabulous engineer. Michael, thank you.
If you can, what would you tell an up and coming you basically, and why?
Yeah, listen, I wish I could go back and tell myself that you're smarter than you think you are, no matter what anybody says. All of you guys are. I think, and I had more power than I thought I did. You know, I know you guys feel like maybe you're kind of young, or just like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. You're smarter than you think you are. And you have more power in your life and in your choices than you think you do. I think I wasted too much time when I was younger feeling just not feeling like I was capable. And it took a while. Like it took time for me, like when I had my degrees and when I had my projects that were successful, to like say like, yeah, I'm capable. But I wish I could just go back and say you were always capable, just like you guys. Like there's nothing that you can't learn. You just have to be interested. And that's what I would tell myself, because I think at the root of everything is that, just having a little bit of self-love.
Denisse, would you mind telling my students about what it's like to have been a very young, because you started at NASA, you were what, 23?
23, yeah, just fresh out. And I started working with them as an intern when I was 20 years old, just shy of 21. It was my first job, yeah.
So can you maybe tell our students what it was like to be a very young, I mean, I know you guys, like 23 probably doesn't sound young, but believe me, 23 is very young. A 23-year-old female intern in a very male-dominated field. Engineering is typically very male-dominated. So what was that like working at?
Yeah, I was also Hispanic, so that's like a double whammy. Yeah, that was for sure. No, so here's what was interesting. So undergraduate, when I was in getting my bachelor's degree at the university, within engineering, the male to female ratio changes. It's kind of interesting. So if you do like biomed engineering, these are the people who build like artificial heart valves or who like work in the medical field. That one's actually about 50-50 male female. If you go to the other extreme, which is electrical engineering and mechanical engineering, we're less than 10%. So what does that mean? In a class of 50, there's 2 of us, and I was one of them. So, you know, that wasn't great, but it didn't feel that different, honestly. Like you're aware of it, but it was, yeah. When I went to NASA, that was a whole, because then I moved to Virginia. So it was like the culture shock of leaving Miami-Dade County con todos mis amigos in like a very different style of people. And I was the only girl in my group for 5 years. I was the only Hispanic girl, for sure. And that felt really lonely until I found out that there was organizations called SHEP. It's a Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers. There's SWE, which is a Society of Women Engineers. So I found my people. I found my people. So like those first couple of years, I felt like isolated and different. But afterwards, you just find your tribe, and they supported me, they mentored me. And then when I got further in my career, I had my own interns towards the end. And that was phenomenal, because then I got to pay it forward to whoever came after me. And that was such an important synergy between the two. But definitely find your tribe, because they're there, they exist. You just got to seek them out.
All right, next question for Denisse. I read some of your questions that you guys submitted for me, and they were really great.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be nervous to ask them. Anyone? 8th grade leaders? Brian Rodriguez, thank you. Go ahead.
What is something that you want to do that you still haven't accomplished?
Oh. What is something I want to do that I haven't accomplished? I don't know, Brian. That's a really good question. You know what's interesting? I told you earlier when I was going to university that I didn't start like one of those lucky people that just knew from the bottom of their heart that that's what they wanted. And so I've kind of lived my life in like short goals. You know, like I never was like, okay, I'm going to work for NASA. I was like, okay, no, wait. I'm going to get a mechanical engineering degree. Okay, now I'm going to get a master's. Okay, now I'm going to get this job. So that's kind of how I've been operating. I guess right now I have a daughter and I have a family, and that's been really cool. And so I'm looking forward to watching her grow up, and I'm looking forward to being her mom, and I'm looking forward to this next wave of engineers that's coming after me, you guys, that whether you know it or not, this is going to affect you, and it's going to affect you in the most beautiful way. Like space is at your fingertips, and I'm really excited to make that accessible and available to you. And to my daughter, she's really cute.
Denisse, can we actually talk a little? I think the students here would be interested to know about space tourism. You mentioned like taking fun trips to space. When is that going to happen?
Yeah. Okay. So like I told you that there's like short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, at least with respect to Blue Origin. So Blue Origin is currently, as I mentioned, the smaller of the 2 rockets, New Shepard, can take you and 3 of your friends to low Earth orbit. And it's so cool because you can literally float like you're in space for about 4 minutes. It's incredible. So you could do that for your birthday. You could do that for a wedding. It's not as crazy as it sounds. At NASA, we have something called the Vomit Comet. It's really called that. I didn't make that up. And it's because people vomit when they're on it. So basically, this is not a rocket. It is a plane, but it behaves, just bear with me. Okay, so like pretend this is a plane. Okay, so it's like a 747, and what it does, it flies elliptical loops. So it goes like this, right? So it goes all the way up, and then it just like drops. And then it goes all the way up, and then it drops. And so when it drops, you've got like 30 seconds of weightlessness. And in those 30 seconds, people get married, they have birthdays. So Blue Origin's kind of doing that, but with a way more like classier approach, because we're going higher. We're actually going to the edge of space. And I don't know if you saw the inside of the crew capsule, but it's nice. It's like all leather and blue, and that's really fun. And also, side note, so that's just for fun and giggles. But the fact that space is accessible means that universities and high schools, they can actually launch experiments into space. So that RadX, the selfie that I showed you guys earlier with the GoPro, we flew some middle school experiments on that. So that was really cool. They got to fly some seeds and do some science. So there's a benefit to being able to make it so accessible so that it's really tangible for a lot of people.
Denisse, can I go to space on my teacher salary?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, maybe we'll see. For Blue Origin, so Blue Origin's like the fancy Cadillac of space tourism. We don't have a set price yet. I told Anna jokingly that the price is like, if you have to ask, you can't afford it, this kind of thing. But the Vomit Comet that NASA does, the one I showed you, I actually looked into getting married there with Kevin, and it was not that bad. It was like 10,000, 15,000, which for a wedding, by the way, it's a lot, okay? But for most weddings, that's not horrible. Yeah, it's crazy, but it's available to you.
All right, guys, this is your chance to ask a real NASA engineer anything you want about space or her job.
Yes, I do.
Oh, Giovanni, go ahead.
What would you consider to be your greatest success in using your skills to solve an engineering problem?
Oh.
Me?
No, not you, Denisse.
Oh.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. All right, I apologize. So if I'm going to repeat the question because I think I got cut off in the second half. Did I hear what you said? What do you think my greatest accomplishment is thus far, Giovanni?
No, the question was, what would you consider to be your greatest success in using your skills to solve an engineering problem?
Ooh. My greatest skills in solving an engineering problem. Okay, I had to think about that because there's a couple that are floating through my mind. I didn't actually tell you what my job title is, did I? So that ties into your question, Giovanni, so thank you for asking that. If you look at like my job description, it says Contamination Control Engineer and Planetary Protection Specialist, which sounds really cool. I'm gonna break that down. So we are going to Mars. And there's a rover on Mars. You know, we have MSL, Spirit, Opportunity. There's a ton of rovers currently on. The one I'm currently talking about is the Mars Science Laboratory. And what's cool about that one is, as you know, we're looking for signs of life in Mars. Now, we build these things in clean rooms over the course of a year. They get on their rocket. They take 2.5 years to get to Mars. They finally land. We start collecting data. And can you imagine our embarrassment? If in that moment we're like, oh, we found organics, we found life, and it turns out that it was Giovanni and Denisse in the clean room who accidentally left skin or human cells that got on the rocket and were sent to Mars and were then deposited on the surface. The transportation of contamination from Earth to other planets is so challenging to do that there's a whole field of engineering dedicated to that. And that's what I specialize in, is that chemistry. How do we make sure that the things that we send over there are really, really clean? So without spending too much time to answer your question, Giovanni, my master's degree is on ways that we can test materials to make sure that when we send them in space and they're in space for 2.5 years, that we don't have those kind of problems.
Okay.
Frank Carlos, go ahead. Frank Carlos, unmute yourself, bud.
Okay. Back to when you were the word where you have like, okay, an intern at NASA.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What were some of your expectations, like before you were inside, and then how did they change like after?
Okay, great. Thank you for your question, Frank. So the question about interns. So I started as an intern, which is why I found it so valuable and why I had my own interns as I got further in my career. The expectations varied. As a high school student, you can be an intern. And as a college undergrad, whether it's community college or university, you can get paid, by the way, pretty handsomely. So it depends. Like one time, I got an intern. So we have these clean rooms. If you guys haven't seen them, they're like, the people who are wearing like full hazmat suits that work inside, working on satellites or whatever. That's what I specialized in Virginia. So I had a lot of my interns who were helping me with that. In fact, there's a YouTube video that I can send Miss Downey of my interns dancing inside. They made a little clean room training video. It was really cute. But they helped me collect data and they helped me analyze data. And the cool thing is, as far as my interns, I don't expect them to know anything when they show up, because what we do is so specific in space. There's no way that anyone has experience in it. So we teach you everything. You just have to be willing to learn. And anything can be learned, and it's not that hard with the right teacher. So they went with me in the classroom. We actually counted how much dust was in the air. We collected chemistry on tables. We made sure that there was no contamination from either ourselves or from fuel lines. And in certain cases, we got the chance to go to Florida and see a launch. So that would be really cool too. So that's available to you guys when you become high school students.
Anyone else? Next question. Does anybody here think that maybe someday they want to go into something with science or technology or engineering? Maybe do something, Jaylene, Samantha, doing something, Nyla, doing something along the lines of what Denisse does. She's got a really amazing job.
It's really fun. And the other thing is too, like, I know sometimes when people ask you that question, guys, it's like hard to answer. And I think if you would have asked like 14-year-old Denisse, I would have probably answered like, well, I think it's interesting. I think it's cool, but I don't know. Like what I want you guys to do is, whenever someone presents something to you, right? Like I'm doing today, if it's somebody else on a different topic, if there's something inside of you that's just like, wow, that's kind of cool. That is your intuition and you should follow it. I don't care if it's space or anything else, but listen to that inner voice, because that inner voice is guiding you.
Denisse, I have a question. Can we go over a little bit about what it's like working for, so NASA, we know, is a government-based company, all right? The NASA is owned by the US government. The federal government gives NASA money, all right? Where Denisse, you now work for a private company run by the richest man in the entire universe. Does anybody know who that is? You should know from your homework this week. Who knows his name? Who owns Blue Origin? Carlos, who is it?
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos. What company does he run, Carlos? Do you remember?
Blue Origin.
Well, yes, he owns Blue Origin, but what else, Jaylene?
Amazon.
Amazon, yes. So the owner of Amazon owns Blue Origin. And so, Denisse, can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to work for a publicly funded federal agency like NASA versus a private company like Blue Origin?
Totally. Oh, it is so different, guys. It is so different. Okay, so government's great because it's stable, it's historic. The resources are amazing. As you know, NASA's been around for over 100 years. We do amazing work. The drawbacks to that is that we are at the mercy of Congress and the president. And that's good and bad, right? So JFK very famously said, we're gonna go to the moon, and we did it. And since then, we've had a lot of presidents, every time they switch hands, the direction changes. And when as you remember from your New Origin assignment, when you have missions that span a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, we need consistent leadership to be able to do these types of projects. So that's always been kind of a challenge. Now to Blue Origin. So I work for the richest man on Earth. Like, there aren't enough zeros next to his name. It's insane. So, we talk about SpaceX, and SpaceX is a competitor, and I don't know if this is part of the assignment or not, but that is owned by Elon Musk. Elon Musk also owns Tesla. If you guys know the Tesla, like the smart cars or the electric cars. So that's the other billionaire who's in this race. But Jeff Bezos blows him out of the water because we all use Amazon. I think during COVID, he made like 45 billion with a B in like 5 days. It's insane. What that means for Blue Origin, though, going back to like all that stuff, cool, but that doesn't affect me, right? Like, good for you, you're a billionaire. Okay, whatever. But for us, as the people who are working in space, it's so different because that allows us to make decisions on what's the right thing to do with respect to engineering. And it's all based on science. Do you know that he sells Amazon stock to pay for Blue Origin? Blue Origin has never made a dime. We've never made $1, ever. The whole company, the company's been around for 10 years. We've never, ever made $1 because it's so expensive. But because we can afford it, we can do cool things like land on a moving ship while there's rough seas. Our rocket can launch in the rain, in a storm, and we can do that because we have unlimited funding. And I do mean unlimited. And also I get paid 3 times what I got paid at NASA. 3 times. That's a lot.
That's crazy. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You would think
it's another world.
You'd make more, but I guess not.
No. Yeah, a lot.
So Denisse, we want to be respectful of your time. I'm going to ask you to.
Remember? There's one more thing.
Oh yes. Oh no. I had another question.
Okay.
Before we show the students our little surprise for them. I had a question. Can you, because I know some of the stuff you built was on Mars and you briefly touched on that. And we talked a lot about Mars in science class and the year ended. So can you just quickly tell us about some of the rovers? Because we talked about opportunity and curiosity, stuff like that. And I just, I want these guys to know that the stuff we talked about in class, you actually helped build, and that's amazing.
I did, yeah. Okay, so not that I'm biased, but my favorite are Spirit and Opportunity, because I'm clearly biased. So here's why. Okay, when I was an undergrad, there's a NASA center in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's called Glenn Research Center. And there was a guy there who I'll never forget. He was so quirky and like a PhD from MIT, electrical engineer. And his job was to take care of the solar panels. And for me, that summer was so emotional because at the time, I don't know if you've covered this in your class or not, but we have dust devils that come through. So dust in Mars is a big problem. And unlike MSL, which has a nuclear reactor in its belly, Spirit and Opportunity use solar panels. So when they get covered with dust, now they don't have power anymore. And if they don't have power, they can die. So every morning we would wake up and we would check and we're like, maybe a dust devil came through. Like, how dusty is it? It was insane. And then the guys had these clocks. We had special watches because a Mars day is different than an Earth day. And when you're sending commands to the rover saying turn right, turn left, there's a delay. There's a really long communication delay. So it kind of looks like, hey, turn right, and then you wait, and then you wait. And then the rover's like, do you want us to turn right? And then you wait, and you're like, yeah, turn right. And then wait, okay, and it turns right. I mean, it takes forever. So what we ended up doing is our watches, we synchronized our watches to go through, it's called SOL days. So people worked around the clock just to be able to talk to Spirit and Opportunity. And then if we have more time, or maybe I can send some resources to Ms. Downey, it was really interesting to see how even while we were building them in clean rooms, Spirit and Opportunity had very different personalities. So it's very expensive to build a rover, but we already had the designs for one. And then we got more funding and we're like, well, why don't we just build 2? Because if one breaks, then at least we have another one. And that's why there's 2. That was not planned. We had extra funding. We just built 2 copies, but exact replicas and completely different personalities. So Spirit, we lovingly labeled her the rebel child. She's a rebel girl. She does what she wants. She doesn't listen to commands. She landed wherever she landed. Her data is always crazy. Like, she was the one that was on the precipice of like a cusp of these little drones. Opportunity, he landed in a different part of the planet. And that part was calm. And he's the first one that gave us that beautiful scenic look. He's the one that always behaves, that never has problem. Spirit over here got one of her wheels stopped working. Sorry, I can tell the last story. They have 6 wheels, right? Okay, so Spirit, her back wheel stopped spinning because there's a lot of dust and it got into the gears and it stopped. So she's, kind of doing this number. Think of a beach. If you're dragging your back leg, what does that do to the sand, right? It like carves it down. So she's moving like this and she's dragging that back wheel and it pushes all that Mars dust out of the way. And you know what we find underneath it? Ice. Frozen water. We would have not found that had her wheel not broken. Spirit and her rebel child, like, thank God she broke down. We found it. I love her to death. My rebel child, yeah, that's Spirit.
That's incredible. Oh my gosh. Denisse, is it true that we're probably going to go back to the moon before we go to Mars?
Yeah, and so that's what's really cool. There's so many things going on right now, and that's why I love, back to Jillian's questions about the privatization of space. Giving it to SpaceX and Blue Origin to go to Mars and the moon and all these other places that are more nearby in the solar system has empowered NASA to do some of the deep space exploration. What is interesting to me is not only the exploration of the moon, but the possibility of those O'Neill colonies that I mentioned, those working laboratories that are functioning communities. That is something we're working on. I know it sounds like it's out of a sci-fi, but it's not. We're doing it. We're doing it right now. So that's absolutely something that's going to happen in your lifetime, and you have the opportunity to be a part of it.
So Denisse, this is going to be the last thing from me, and then I'll see if anyone else has any last minute questions. But I've told my students more than once that the movie, oh my gosh.
The Martian?
Yes, I was about to say, with that beautiful actor, Matt Damon, of course. The Martian, yeah. I've told them that that's actually pretty accurate, except for maybe like that dust storm in the beginning. But other than that, it's a pretty accurate science film. Is that true?
That is so true. Yes. So NASA actually consulted on it. And if you go for the couple of years afterwards, all the Comic-Cons around the country, they would have a NASA guest personnel. So some of these movies will get scientists to consult, right? They'll like say like, hey, here's a plot, like you're a scientist, what do you think? But The Martian was completely different. The author of the book wrote an entire dissertation on it and based it on factual research. There has never in the history of movies been one more accurate. The only thing on that entire movie that's not accurate is the that initial condition that got him stuck in the first place, because that would never happen because we have safety. But you know, there needs to be a story. So that's the only caveat. But everything from growing the potatoes to all the problems that he had with the winds and getting lost and the power, everything is true. And all the engineering and his engineering solutions are also accurate.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right, 8th graders, do we have any last minute questions for our amazing engineer speaker about Mars or the moon or just space in general? All right, well, before we sign off then, I'm gonna let Denisse tell you guys, she has a little surprise for you. Go ahead.
So I wish I could do this in person. I would love to talk to you guys one-on-one. I would love to see your faces and even just hang out in a one-to-one setting and answer your questions individually. So maybe that's an opportunity later on the line. But one thing that I always feel very fortunate to be able to do is whenever I go to a classroom, I always bring goodies. And, you know, I'm not there, but I am mailing them to you. So they're on their way. Ms. Downey is going to get 45 of these NASA stickers. They're like true. I got them when I was working there. You can only get it if you're an employee. So you guys are officially my interns. You can put this on your laptop. You can put it on your hydro. You can put it on your textbook. You can put it anywhere you want. These things will survive everything. You could put them in a dishwasher, a washing machine, you could put it in your car, like wherever your heart desires. It's on its way to you. It's going to go to Miss Downey's apartment first, and then she's going to work it out with the school. So just be on the lookout. This is on its way to you. And Miss Vargas, we have something special for you as well.
Yes. And yeah, so I have your addresses from Miss Lieberman, and I'm going to mail Denisse's special gift for you guys. So that's amazing. So, all right, 8th grade. One last time, any last minute questions? Oh, Ms. Vargas, yes.
Can I actually, well, sorry, thank you so much for this, and it was just so great hearing everything, and I'm sorry I was kind of, you know, doing some other things, okay. I'm sure, as you know, with the kid in your eye.
I know.
So thanks so much for, especially you taking your time for this. But there are a few 8th graders who I actually need to talk to. So I was wondering if while you're like on this, like when you're about to leave the meeting, if you could either like switch me to host or something, and I can like make those 8th graders stay so I can talk to them. Would that be okay?
I absolutely can, Lacey. I just don't know how to switch host.
Awesome. Or you could just stay on the meeting and like take your
I can
video
do that,
off.
yeah.
Awesome.
Okay,
Can I read the list of students who need to stay?
Yes, sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Leonardo.
Leonardo had to hop off. He texted me. His phone died.
No problem. Okay. Giovanni, Michael M, Kelly, Daniel, Fran Carlos, and Elijah hopped off too. Okay, so yeah, just the people who I read. Mommy. Sorry, thank you about that.
Absolutely. All right, 8th graders, you guys can show your gratitude.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much for coming by, and this was amazing. And if you're ever in New York City, Denisse, please come do a whole school time talk at my.
I would love to. I would love to.
That would be amazing. All right, 8th grade, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you guys for your questions, and I'll see you guys on a Zoom next week. All right, bye, 8th grade.